Today I'm going to read a poem by Sylvia Plath, mid-20th century poet, called Black Rook in Rainy Weather, which feels very fitting for this rainy morning. On the stiff twig up there hunches a wet black rook, arranging and rearranging its feathers in the rain. I do not expect a miracle or an accident to set the sight on fire in my eye, not seek any more in the desultory weather some design, but let spotted leaves fall as they fall, without ceremony or portent. Although I admit I desire occasionally some backtalk from the mute sky, I can't honestly complain. A certain minor light may still leap incandescent out of the kitchen table or chair, as if a celestial burning took possession of the most obtuse objects now and then, thus hallowing an interval otherwise inconsequent, by bestowing largesse, honour, one might say love. At any rate, I now walk wary, for it could happen even in this dull, ruinous landscape, sceptical yet politic, ignorant of whatever angel may choose to flare suddenly at my elbow. I only know that a rook ordering its black feathers can so shine as to seize my senses, haul my eyelids up, and grant a brief respite from fear of total neutrality. With luck, trekking stubborn through this season of fatigue, I shall patch together a content of sorts. Miracles occur, if you care to call those spasmodic tricks of radiance miracles. The wait's begun again, the long wait for the angel, for that rare, random descent. And so the poem is in many ways a quest for the beautiful, and that's expressed as something that's rare. In terms of time, it's brief, a flare, a brief respite, spasmodic, and also in terms of light, radiance, shine, fire, celestial burning. And we might say, so far, so poetic, in that poetry often seeks out the exhilaration of these ecstatic, gem-like moments. But one of the things I like about this poem is the way that the poet speaks to us in the ordinary cadences of her observations about a bird in the tree and the kitchen chair and table. And so it's quite different from, say, the Michael Field poems, where we don't have that kind of extra narrative sense. And I think that it makes Plath's leaps into incandescence all the more compelling. It's a poem that seeks to quell her own expectations, to manage her own disappointment and ours by setting up that initial negation. I do not expect a miracle or an accident. I do not seek for those things. And she's also questioning whether beauty is a miracle or an accident. So is it something that's designed, that holds a meaning beyond its own random occurrence? The poem is largely iambic, which means it has a light stress followed by heavy stress, and that's the kind of the rhythmic or the metrical flow of many poems in English. The metre in the first line disrupts the metrical scheme a little by placing two light stresses followed by two heavy stresses on the stiff twig. And those two heavy stresses create a more emphatic sound, and in some ways enact the stiff twig by bunching up the line. And the T, B and K consonants in the second line of the wet black rook also clog up the reading. We have 4 heavy syllables and only 2 light syllables in this line, which I think mimics the hunching over of the black rook, the way the line hunches over 2, and so the poetry is aligned with her observation of the bird. I think it also mirrors the poet's own stiffness or stuckness at this point in the poem, as she's grappling with the potential disappointment of an absence of miracles. And each stanza has a longer middle line surrounded by shorter lines, and to me this also performs the movement of the poet's thought as she veers between her desire for a miracle, this moment of celestial burning, but also fears that it might not happen, that she has to pull herself back. So as if in those middle lines she lets herself unfurl, but then has to reel herself back in those shorter lines. And we can see another moment occurring in that phrase, leap incandescent, and the poet performs a leap over the stanza break here, that white space between the verses giving her room to leap, as it were. And the poem shifts in the middle of the third to last stanza, where she moves from conjecture and negation into certainty. So she says, I only know, but that's still an I know. And the rook's wet black feathers are transformed into a shining light, which will seize my senses, haul my eyelids up, and that nice alliteration there on seize my senses. But those words, seize and haul, imply something being done to her, something external that grips her, that forces her even to have this expansion of her sensual experience of the world. And the final stanza is still sceptical, if you care to call those spasmodic tricks of radiance miracles. But we've definitely moved from the pessimism of the opening, I do not expect, to the poet doing what she is meant to do, waiting for the rare, random descent of the incandescent moment.